Well, hello, everybody. It is Dr. Debbie Gagish, and I'd like to welcome you to TPG's Revenues. A couple of times a week, we do some live streaming on topics related to marketing, anything from technology to strategy. This is my segment, which is called Get Real with Revenue Marketing. And if you know anything about me, you know that I am absolutely passionate about the topic of revenue marketing. I've been doing it, writing about it, thinking about it, consulting about it, and helping others learn the principles of revenue marketing since around 2004. And the idea behind the show was, let's address the elephant in the room, the elephant that's sitting right in the middle on that conference table. Why is it taking marketers so long to adopt financial accountability? We have all the tools, we're drowning in technology, we have the data, we have everything that we need, so why aren't we getting there? So through this twice a week show, I introduce topics that really address how do you get that seat at that table and how do you become a revenue marketer? So tonight, I want to continue our series on the 14 strategies required for a CMO who wants to run a revenue marketing organization. But before we do that, I'd like to tell you about some upcoming shows. I'm very excited. So far, everything that I've done has just been me chatting with you guys. And oh, by the way, it is 5 o'clock somewhere, so it's Thursday. So please, I hope you're having a drink while you're watching the show or listening to the show. So, and it was always playing that way. I wanted to do a soft launch first, just, kind of get my feet under me for this show. And then I wanted to start bringing in guests. And so this past week, I started inviting folks, and we have just an incredible lineup. I have CMOs who are coming on board. I've got CEOs that we'll be talking to, heads of marketing, heads of demand generation, digital transformation leaders, heads of marketing operations. And one guest that I'm really, really excited about that'll be coming later in March is Stella Grisant, who has a company called the Work Happiness Method. And she does incredible work. It's all about the psychology of happiness and how do you apply that to your job. So in addition to just straight up marketing, I'll also have what I hope will be highly creative and highly entertaining guests on the show. Because I think at the end of the day, what we do as marketers is part science, and it's also part creative, and we have a lot of pressure, a lot of things that we have to do. So I think anything that can help us be more creative while we're applying that science and can help us depressurize and not have as much pressure ourselves, the better that is. So I'll be talking about those kinds of things as well. So today, this is part 3 of a 4-part series. And again, this is all from my upcoming book, which I think that the publication date is now May 26th. It's called From Backroom to Boardroom, Earn Your Seat with Strategic Marketing Operations. And what we're talking about today are the 14 forward-looking strategies that are required for a CMO to adopt revenue accountability. And just to remind you, this is research that I did as part of my dissertation process to earn my doctorate degree. And I worked with a panel of CMOs. I did a Delphi study, which means that I was looking for a high level of agreement on 98 different items that were identified through various sources around, if you're going to be a CMO of a revenue marketing organization, what are those strategies that you absolutely positively need to have in place? And so far, we've talked about technology and data as an enabler. Well, that's kind of like a duh, right? Everybody knows that. We talked about how the CMO needs to run marketing like a business. We've talked about how CMOs are embracing a new scorecard and they're adopting new compensation. We talked about working in the company environment, and that means really understanding the cultural accelerators and barriers if you're going to transform marketing into a revenue marketing organization. And then we also talked about how the CMO needs to act like a data-driven leader and also a digital marketing leader. That's a lot of stuff for a CMO to do, but there's still a whole lot more. Then the last time I got into what I call the CMO revenue marketing building blocks. This is the blocking of tackling of what it takes to build a revenue marketing organization. And last time, I talked a little bit about, we're just going to be getting into this now. So today I'm going to be talking about building cross-functional alignment, establishing trust and credibility, creating a performance culture, very important, and new skills on the marketing team. So let's just get right into it. I don't think that it's a surprise that, the CMO has to be responsible for building cross-functional alignment. I think more and more marketing is becoming a team sport, and I've talked about that in some of my other shows before. And it really is incumbent upon the CMO as the leader of the organization to open up the channels of communication and to create cross-functional alliances. Because revenue marketers cannot do their jobs in a vacuum. For example, if marketers are going to create a lead management process, you can't do that without sales, and you can't do it without sales operations, right? So more and more, I find that marketers are having to reach across the aisle, and they're having to create relationships to actually get their job done. So think about marketing organization. You've got an org chart, and it's basically the reporting structure. But also marketers now need to have what I call a collaboration chart or a collaboration network, because to get their job done, they can't just work within the halls of marketing. They have to work with sales. They have to work with executives. They have to work with finance. They have to work with inside sales. They may have to work with a customer success team. So the ability to create these cross-functional relationships is critically important. And in my opinion, it's so important that from a CMO's perspective, they need to create an org chart, but they need to have another printed piece of paper that says, this is our collaboration chart. And that needs to be communicated, and it needs to be in agreement with the other parts of the organization that you're going to have to work with. So I just think that that is incredibly important. And one of the things that I did in my study is I asked the CMOs, who are the most important people outside of marketing that you need to be communicating with and creating a cross-functional relationship. And if you've listened to any of my episodes, you know that number one, far away, before anything else, was the sales organization, followed by the executive team, followed by finance, the board, customer support, and then IT was last. And I find that in really well-functioning revenue marketing organizations, you almost can't tell where sales starts, marketing ends, and sales starts. There's just this fluidity because they really do act like a revenue team. The CMO, the VP of demand generation, they walk and talk like a VP of sales. They talk about quotas, they talk about attainment, they know where the pipeline is, they know how things are performing. I also think that the other critical alignment that goes such a long way is to create a cross-functional relationship with finance. A couple of years ago, I had a radio show called Revenue Marketing Radio, and one of my guests was Liz Sophia, who was then the vice president of marketing, and then she was on with her CFO. And they were there to talk about that relationship between marketing and the CFO. And it's a great relationship because there's a lot of cross-education that needs to happen. First of all, if you're the CMO, if you can work with the CMO to understand how do the financials of the organization work, to be able to speak that language of a profit and loss statement, just to be able to understand how and where you can contribute to the business. So that's something that the CFO can train the CMO on. Likewise, the CMO can train the CFO on, did you know all of these things were possible through marketing? Things that the CFO probably has zero visibility into. Quite often, I always tell the story that marketing is the CFO's worst nightmare. If they're going to be taking Maalox or having Maalox moments, it's because of marketing. Because in most organizations, marketing is the black hole of the money pit. The money goes and nobody knows what it goes to. So that relationship between sales and marketing is critical, but so is that relationship with finance. You can get a very, very powerful advocate in place if you can make that connection with the CFO. And I love this quote from the book. It's a sales and marketing quote, and it wasn't from the book. It was from one of the CMOs in my dissertation. He said, "I believe alignment between sales and marketing is critical to any firm's future prospects. To achieve that alignment, sales and marketing need to be peers, share common objectives, and be compensated on similar measures." And again, I've talked about that before, how critical that sales and marketing relationship is. But again, that creating these cross functional alignments are absolutely critical. And along with that comes another element that I talk about here, and that's establishing that trust and credibility. When you reach across the aisle and you begin to make these additional relationships, your ability to build trust and to build credibility, because remember, as marketing is transforming from a cost center to a revenue center, you are recoding your own DNA, but you're reinforming and re-educating your entire organization around what you can do. And you need to be able to build that trust with the other parts of the organization. A big part of that trust comes doing things that you say you're going to do, reporting on those things, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, and having total transparency. Those are the kinds of things that revenue marketers can do to build trust and to build credibility. And the credibility really is important because, as I mentioned earlier, only about a third of CMOs report financial numbers in terms of pipeline and revenue and growth. My suspicion is 50% of that does not have credibility and weight to it. So we still have a big way to go around creating that, that credibility, that trust. Those things are very important. The other thing that happens is, and this is number 10 out of 14, is really creating a performance culture. Now, it's always very interesting when I come into an organization, and I typically work with organizations that are going through the transformation. And when they're going from being an activity driven, let's just measure the activities that we do. How many webinars did we do? How many views do we have on a page? Activity based metrics, to one that is based on performance. And performance has to do with results. And again, as much as you would like for the art and the science and all those other things about marketing to really get you the seat at the table, it's the revenue number that gets you the seat at the table. And so it was interesting because the idea of creating a performance culture was something that came up repeatedly in my study with this group of CMOs. I asked a lot of questions around our performance culture. I asked how important it was to establish that. The answers were off the charts on that. I asked how important is it to focus on results versus activities? How important is it to establish financially oriented metrics and KPIs? How important is it to support an environment of experimentation and continuous improvement? And how important is it to drive process and system thinking? And in all of those, 100% 4s and 5s on a scale of 1 through 5, with the mean kind of going toward 5. And I think a lot of times that is one of the biggest things that a CMO struggles with, is how do I get my team to quit thinking about tactics and to be thinking about deliverables and be thinking about what kind of results can we drive? How do we become a performance culture? And that's why there's 14 strategies that a CMO needs to adopt, because a revenue marketing culture is a performance culture. This is not a slow this is not a fast transition, and this is not a transition that happens overnight. It is a transition that takes time, and depending upon the culture and how ready a company is to accept change and how ready you are to drive change, will depend upon how long something is actually going to take. So building that performance culture, one where you've got dashboards, where you've got reporting, where you talk about results, where you talk about, You run things like a stock portfolio. You do things, you double down on things that are working well, meaning, i.e., they're contributing to pipeline, they're contributing to revenue, they're contributing to growth, they're contributing to profit margin, they're contributing to average deal size. And the things that are not doing that, you get rid of them, right? That's what a performance culture is all about. And again, with the tools that we have at our disposal today, with the technology and the data that we have, there is no reason why we can't have this wonderful performance culture in revenue marketing. And the last one that I want to talk about tonight is new skills on the marketing team. So when I wrote my book, when I interviewed the executives for my book, From Backroom to Boardroom, Earn Your Seat with Strategic Marketing Operations, when I started talking about talent, every single executive could not shut up. Finding talent is a big issue. And I will be having a separate episode. I haven't been drinking that much, honestly, I haven't. But I will be having a separate episode just on talent. And I'll also be having someone on my show, Toby Murdoch, who was the founder of Kapost and who has sold his company and now has a new company that is all about democratizing availability to software skills and knowledge for the disadvantaged. So I'll be very happy to have him on the show. But when I talk about new skills on the marketing team, it's not just as simple as, oh, I have to have this new skill, let me go get that person and bring them in. First of all, it can be a challenge to find the right skills. That's number one. And number two, when you start bringing on very different skills in your team, it also tells me that you're going to be doing very different activities. So just think about the 4 Ps that you learned in college: promotion, price, placement, and promotion. I think I got them all 4. When you start bringing on revenue marketers, especially in the marketing operations organization, you're bringing on new skills and you're doing things that you have never done before. So it's not as easy as it sounds. It's hard to find the talent. And then even when you bring the talent on, sometimes you have issues around how much you have to pay that person to come on board. And sometimes those salaries are higher than some of your older salaries. So there may be some salary issues. You may need to start making organizational changes. There's always organization changes when you start adding new skills and start adding new capabilities within that marketing team. And 2 of the questions that I asked the CMOs in the study was, number 1, how important is it for the revenue-oriented CMO to have the right skills on a marketing team, the technical and analytical? And how important was it for the CMO to adjust the current marketing organization to include that technical and analytical talent? Of course, got 100% in the 4 and 5 category because it truly is incredibly important. So today, I took a look at 4 of the strategies required of a CMO who wants to run a revenue marketing organization. And these all come in the category of what I call CMO building blocks. We looked at building cross-functional alignment and establishing trust and credibility. We looked at creating a performance culture, and we looked at new skills on the marketing team. Now, books could be written about any one of those topics, and I just wanted to kind of give you guys a quick flavor of what these 14 strategies are, because at the end of the day, what it describes is how complex marketing has become. It is not a black and white job. It is a challenging career to have. So much is changing so very quickly. And I think a lot of times, I think that technology has outpaced our ability to stay in line and really optimize what we have in our hands. And again, if you think about it, if I were to go up to a CMO and and the CMO says, Debbie, how can we become a revenue marketing organization? And I say, oh, it's really simple. You just have to adopt these 14 strategies. Yeah, right. You'd probably run out of the room screaming. It's complex and it absolutely takes time. So I hope I have enlightened you a little bit today on your revenue marketing journey. I'll see you next time. And remember, it is a great day to be a revenue marketer. We'll see you soon. Have a drink.